This video is the first in a three-part series as we continue to look at diversity leadership. Our focus will be to engage in reflective and reflexive conversations as we examine our ability and willingness to influence our learning community to grow into inclusive spaces. We will keep in mind our role as change agents and the state of diversity affairs in our country and in the Caribbean region as a whole. How would you describe a diversity leader? When asked this question, many of you use words such as embracing, proactive, open-minded, passionate, empowering, and inspirational. What are some of the key characteristics of a diversity leader? Continuously unfolding self-awareness through critical self-reflection. Critical consciousness and commitment to social justice, knowledge and understanding of diversity issues and how they manifest in your institution, cultural proficiency, and moral courage, persistence, and resilience. Why is persistence, courage, and resilience necessary, you may ask? We will examine more of this in part 3 when we shift our focus to advocacy and advocacy leadership. As you think of yourself as a diversity leader, remember a few things. The leader sets the tone. The leader impacts the culture and the climate of the school. The leader leads from in front. Let us quickly look at key competencies of a diversity leader. Gather and use data to inform policy and decision making and ensure accountability. Build an organizational culture and climate that embraces diversity. Communicate effectively and courageously. And I want you to think about that word, courageously. Manage conflict and resistance to change. And provide staff with the knowledge, skills, and support to promote equity. This speaks to the need for education and training for those of us who teach and lead within education. A large problem we have in the region is a lack of understanding on issues of difference and diversity. Many of us simply do not understand the policies, human rights framework, or what it takes to ensure inclusion. But are we willing to learn? Do we wish to do so? Or will knowing impact and take away the views and beliefs we hold so dear? What good will knowing do to your work as a diversity leader? These are some questions we really should place on the table as we continue our discussion about diversity leadership. Fostering and encouraging diversity is an important aspect of being a leader in a diverse educational setting. How do you foster diversity in your learning community? What are some of your actions that define your inclusive work? What does inclusion look like at your school? If I came to your school, how would I know I am included? How would I be able to share the space, the physical space and the social space? These are questions for your reflection. Diversity awareness, self. This is my favorite part of the discussion, examination of self. Many of us do not do well with internal assessment. We are scared. We are not mirror people. We rather look outside than look inside. But let us begin at the beginning. And for me, that beginning is always with self. The diversity leader thinks of certain things, and let us get into it. You are aware that diversity includes ability, age, citizenship, ethnicity, gender, geography, language, nationality, race, religion, socioeconomic status, and sexual orientation. Be aware of your own biases and prejudice. Examine your own privilege and power as an educational leader. Be conscious of differences around you. Look around you. Be very conscious. Be deliberate about inclusion. People sometimes act on the expectations of inclusiveness. It is just an act. You are not genuinely inclusive. You are just performing the inclusive task. People do things because policy states so, but you don't really practice inclusion. Or oftentimes we find ourselves checking the box. We check the inclusion box to make sure we did this, but the next day we are gone back to the same way. So self-awareness is extremely important. Diversity awareness. Others. Diversity leaders are aware of patterns of discrimination, inequalities, and injustice, and how these systematic patterns can show up covertly in their learning communities. As a diversity leader, you must be aware. This is about being aware and not being blind and ignorant. Here are some questions for your reflection. As you look at this picture, do you think these students in the picture are the same? How are they different? Are they all included? In what ways would one child be excluded if it was your school? What patterns of inequality and injustice have you recognized in your own learning community? Our goal is to continue our reflective self-study and engage in meaningful learning that will allow us to become culturally competent and proficient diversity leaders. Cultural competency and proficiency refer to the ability of educators to successfully serve children and youth of all cultural backgrounds represented within school populations, particularly those from racially, ethnically, linguistically, or economically marginalized groups. Getting to a place of cultural proficiency is a process. It takes time, it takes effort, and a willingness to learn and unlearn. Let us look at this model by Lindsey Roberts and Campbell Jones of cultural proficiency, Continuum. First step, cultural destructiveness, includes negating, disparaging, or purging cultures distinct from one's own. Cultural incapacity includes celebrating the superiority of one's culture and suppressing cultures that are different from one's own. Cultural blindness entails acting as if differences among cultures do not exist and refusing to recognize differences. Cultural precompetence includes recognizing that the lack of knowledge, experience, and understanding of other cultures limit the ability to effectively interact with others. Cultural competence includes interacting with cultural groups in ways that recognize and value their differences, assessing one's skills, expanding one's knowledge and resources, and ultimately adapting one's behavior. And that takes us to cultural proficiency, which cultural proficiency includes honoring differences among cultures, viewing diversity as a benefit, and interacting knowledgeably and respectfully among a variety of cultural groups. Where are you on this continuum? Of course, getting there is not an easy task. And as we examine self, let us look at the internal resistance to critical self-reflection, because this video is about self-reflection, but of course there is going to be resistance of the critical self. Acknowledging personal bias is difficult because people perceive and experience themselves as moral, decent, and fair. Such a realization is at odds with and threatens self-image of those who consciously believe in social justice and democracy. Recognizing one's own personal bias means that one can no longer avoid taking personal responsibility for change. We have a job to do as diversity leaders. Of course, many of us will resist that inner reflection. We will create excuses for ourselves and for our actions. And some of these excuses comes in the wariness of stereotype, questioning the validity and significance of the issues, distancing and pleading ignorance, reluctance or failure to apply theory to lived experience, and a reluctance to recognize your own power and privilege. Do you think there are patterns of discrimination and inequality in your learning community? That is a question we must think about. And if that answer is yes, what are your views? Where do you stand? Who are you as a diversity leader? Remember, no one is totally immune from harboring bias and prejudice. Do not berate yourself. Encourage yourself and make a personal commitment to make this effort an ongoing part of your personal development. The key is to treat everyone as an individual and to respect and celebrate difference. These are actions that are purpose-driven. We must will ourselves to engage in deep reflection about who we are and our values and what we believe. How do we uncover personal biases, stereotyping, prejudice, and discrimination? Ask yourselves questions. Critically analyze your personal reactions. Deliberately seek out information to dissolve stereotypes and prejudices. Consciously think about the language you use, the jokes you tell and listen to. It is a conscious, it is a deliberate, it is a critical action. It is an action of reflection, and not just reflection, but reflexive action also. In bringing this section to a close, again, we must think about ourselves as a diversity leader. And we asked ourselves at the beginning, and we'll ask ourselves again, who is the diversity leader? We think about things like moral awareness. Earlier we spoke of resilience and courage and strength and passion, sense of empathy, awareness of diversity, open eyes, a strong sense of value for cultural differences, respect and love for others, respect and love for what is different from you, a capacity and commitment to constantly reflect. We come back again at moral courage, using data in your decision making, be informed, build a climate that embraces diversity, model the desired behaviors, look at the policies around you, look at the standards around you. What plans do you have for inclusion in your learning community? And engage all members in collaborative problem solving. These things we consider as we move into inclusion, as we establish ourselves as diversity leaders in our learning communities.